Nikki, Director of Training with PRPS. I know this is a little less than 2 weeks from our last roundtable, but because the CDC came out with their guidelines, I thought we'd schedule this one and touch base with any questions, see where everyone's at. And it's actually going to release a poll for us to see the status of where everyone's camps are. I know Jane, she's on the call but mainly listening, has said that they have canceled their camps officially. Sue as well in Mechanicsburg has canceled their camps. So if anyone wants to, I know we're releasing the poll, but how is everyone doing at this point in time? Is anyone still a go? Has anyone canceled? What are the reasons? We'll start with that, and then we'll go into some of the CDC guidelines, and if there's questions on those. I know the one caveat with the CDC guidelines, which I found interesting with them, is they say, refer to your state and local officials or authorities. So the interesting part of that is that we are still waiting for those ourselves. So let's start off with, where are you at with your summer camp program? And just as a reminder, if you can share your video, we'd love to see your face. You are all on mute, so please unmute yourself if you're deciding to speak up, or you can feel free to put it in the chat box as well. I do see some people putting their responses. West Goshen has canceled summer camp, but they will have a modified program at the end of summer.
We are in the same, Nikki. We have canceled our 7-week Monday through Friday extended program from preschool to teens. We've canceled that completely by our board of supervisors and township managers and school district. We will be looking at some virtual contracted programs starting after July 1st, depending on what the governor says.
Okay, great. Others?
This is Pat from Mount Lebanon Recreation. We decided to cancel our summer camps and the 4th of July celebration. The school district had not approved nor did they deny the use of their buildings, but so just that uncertainty, and then also not having indoor facilities to be able to use as a backup in the event of inclement weather. And so much of what we do happens within 6 feet of other people. So we just felt that we couldn't deliver the same quality programs that our residents are accustomed to having. So we unfortunately had to cancel.
Okay.
Nikki here, pretty close to Mount Lebanon and Upper St. Clair in Western PA. We're a little more optimistic this week than we were last week, and that's because the Allegheny County Health Department for our county has put out some pretty manageable guidelines for summer camp. We've also been told by the YMCA's of Pittsburgh, and that's there's 7 camps that will be running in Allegheny County and the surrounding community. They've announced that they are a go, with the exceptions of the ones in the school. So that kind of gave us a little more to work with, we felt. So we haven't officially decided either way, but we definitely are a little more optimistic.
Okay.
Nikki, this is Paul Capera, Middletown Township. What we decided to do, the way we set this out, is our what we call our Cadillac version. We can't get on buses, we can't go swimming and everything else like that. So we're going to refund the money. We've devised this Chevy, which is 5 weeks from July 13th through August 14th, which is going to be all on site, a different price range, much smaller in scope. So on a normal summer, we handle 525 unique children. By spreading them out at the 3 different sites, each group is going to be 20 campers, 5 counselors, so we never exceed 25. For the people that sign up, those 25 people are going to be together all summer, so that if anybody is tested positive for the coronavirus, we've since isolated it in between each. So we're going to have 1 full day camp for up to 20 people at 1 facility. And then the other 2 sites are going to be a 9 a.m. to noon, and then a 1 to 4 half day. In between each of the hours, we're going to clean and sterilize the facilities and make sure everything's good. We're working through the issues now with the segregated drop-off, taking of temperatures, you know, hand sanitizer all over the place, that kind of thing. And then we're just trying to develop games that we can, like, imagine touch football with fun noodles. So the defenders have fun noodles or half a fun noodle, and they can tag the person and basically just keep them spaced out that way. Soccer lends itself to this kind of stuff, and then we can give them a piece of chalk and say, here, fill in the parking lot spot here, and you know, we'll have an art contest at some point. But by keeping the group small, so from 525 to 100 is a significant downfall. But what we're also seeing is from surveys that we had done, anywhere from a third to a half of the parents and the families in our community were not going to go and come to camp anyway. So we had a much smaller group to deal with. The other thing I will tell you is we're in Bucks County, so we're solid red till June 4th. The reason why we picked the dates we did is you know, we're hoping that if we're not green at that point, we're close to it so that we could do a little bit more physical activity, because under yellow, the basketball rims are still down, the playgrounds can't be used. So while it wouldn't be a total suck fest, it would be very hard on the staff to get the kids moving and grooving, because some parents just said, I just want my kid to run around somewhere with someone that isn't me, because, you know, we're sick of each other.
Right. I like your game ideas with the noodles. I think that's fun. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else before we kind of move on?
Nikki, I can give you the results of the poll.
That would be awesome.
The poll results are 14 of you, or 27%, have canceled your camp program. Another 14, or 27%, haven't made a decision yet. 4 of you, or 8%, plan to run with safety protocols in place. And 17, or 33%, plan to run a modified version. 2 or 4% are doing a virtual camp only.
I did see a question in the chat box about, I'm trying to find it again, please bear with me, awaiting direction from the state, and are we going to get that? We hope and believe so. As far as we have heard, they were hoping to release information this week. I know most, if not all of you, are aware that PRPS put out some guidelines about, I don't know, 2.5 weeks ago. We got a lot of feedback on those, and what happened, the staff took that feedback and updated / modified that guidance and actually sent it to the governor's office for their review and thoughts. So we're hoping that they were able to review that. Maybe it was helpful to them. But from what we're hearing from the governor's office is that they were hoping to provide their, I don't know if they're actually going to call it guidelines, but they were hoping to make an announcement this week. So I don't know if it's actually going to come out today or next week. I think they were primarily waiting on the CDC guidelines like the rest of us. So hopefully we may hear that today. I know I looked on the pa.gov website this morning. I believe he is speaking at 2 o'clock. So you can check, you know, he does it on social media. It's also probably on your local news channel. So that, hopefully that information will come out today. I have been checking my email to see if I've gotten any updates from Tim. I also know that the CDC did a webinar the other night, Tuesday night. Was anyone on that? Because they did discuss camp and youth programs, and they kind of discussed their guidelines. Did anyone participate and want to share any good information they found on that or questions they had from that? As a reminder, you are all on mute, so if you want to unmute yourself and speak up, it's always better for people to hear your voice versus me reading them the chat box.
I tuned in for that as well. and I found it interesting that by the end, there were 488 questions / comments in the chat box by the end, that I feel like I left that meeting with things I hadn't thought of, with way more questions than I entered. To me, I thought that said a lot, that I left with more questions than I ever got answers.
Right.
So that was
Um,
alarming.
It was, I will say, it was a little difficult to follow. They didn't
Yes.
have their information presented on slides. Some questions that came up were campers wearing masks. So in the CDC guidelines that you read, it did not mention campers wearing masks, but in the discussion, it did talk about campers wearing masks. So ages 2 and above, as long as they don't have any health issues, they made the recommendation for campers to wear masks. As any normal human being who may have worked with kids, we all know the reality of that is questionable. So I think a lot of people questioned how their written documentation and their webinar kind of didn't match. So I would say, you know, depending on what our state actually determines, I would still say that's not clear from the CDC. So I would look to maybe your local health department and see what they say, but I don't think it's a realistic expectation for campers to wear masks when it's 900 degrees. I don't know what other people's thoughts are on that.
Well, Nikki, it's like you said, guidelines are guidelines and kids are kids. It's just, it's the written word versus how kids behave. And we all know, even if you tell them 10 million times, they're not going to follow every little thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're having a hard time doing it just at home now. And with schools, let alone on a playground having to wear a mask, I think. And like you said, 90 degrees. Like if it's hot, it's going to be very difficult to monitor.
Exactly. Sorry, I'm answering a question in the chat box. What other questions do you have regarding the CDC guidelines at this point? I know another question that came up during that poll was the use of playgrounds. And on that call as well, from what I understood, is that they actually said campers could use playgrounds. But in our state, playgrounds cannot be used in the yellow phase. They said if campers use playgrounds, it should be cleaned in between each use. That's, again, no, you can't.
Well, what's each use? Every kid, every hour? What is that?
Exactly.
It's like you have to hire a janitor to go around and clean up everything before, like, and that would be their job. Just cleaning, wiping, you know, playgrounds, tables, equipment, like that's what they would do all day. Don't see a college or high school student doing that. Unless you give them really, really good pay.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. I remember shaking my head a lot because I thought, I remember actions I've seen on Facebook over different things when I listened to the governor's thing is parents are very upset over playgrounds not being able to be used. I just, playgrounds are one of the dirtiest surfaces in that we have. We actually had a playground class the other day, and our instructor had gone over some of the dirtiest surfaces, not only, you know, on a playground, but in your house, and playgrounds is one of the dirtiest. And not only is something like COVID there, but all the other bodily fluids and stuff like that. And I just, I'm just sorry, I'm getting distracted by people doing stuff in the chat box. But you know, being able to sanitize them properly, you have to not only sanitize it, but it takes hours to dry so that it's safe for people to go back on. So I kind of shook my head a little bit when we were listening to that. Now, is anyone, whatever phase, are you hoping to use your playground? If you have a more private playground, are you hoping to use it if it's just a pod of children? Are there other thoughts on that? Are you hoping just to, you know, if it's your small group, making sure that they wash their hands?
Nikki, Beth from Dormont, we have a wooden playground. So we're hoping for some clarity on that because it seems like that carries it a little bit less. But the sanitizing question is you can't really sanitize wood. So we're hoping to, but we're also trying to figure out the guidelines of the groups. Are we supposed to kick the public out when we use it, set up certain times it's closed, and try to figure out with our parks crew what cleaning up that area might look like?
That's an interesting question. Wood playgrounds, I didn't think about that one. We can, what we can do is we can reach out to the gentleman who teaches our playground class and kind of get some feedback from him on what wood playground sanitation may be, or how he may be able to answer that question. As far as other groups, so it's a public playground?
Yeah, it's a public playground that's right by our rec center, so it's walkable distance. They traditionally use it from like 10 to 11. And obviously our pool's closed, so we're going to be probably doing it in the afternoon. So do we close it to the general public during that time? Or is there enough room in an active zone to have over the 25 recommended?
What are other people doing for that? If you're using the playground, say whatever phase that we're allowed to use playgrounds in, what are you doing if you have your campers on that playground? Remember, you'll just have to unmute yourself.
And I would say to add to that, does anybody have a plan to open their playground and what that's going to look like with their parks crew?
Hey, Nikki, this is Tyler. You know, that was a good question. Where we are with all that is we know we can't open playgrounds till green, but at the end of the day, we were talking about this, you know, as a team yesterday with the pool question as well. A lot of this has to be assumed risk. And if a family is making the decision to access a playground, yes, we will do our very best to make sure sanitizing measures and things are in place. But if the family is making that decision, that is assumed risk. And they could possibly contract COVID. In our view, it's no different than, you know, there's all kinds of other diseases that unfortunately could be contracted at a recreation center, from MRSA to, I mean, you hope not to see those, but it could happen. Like, you know, so at some point there has to be more assumed risk, and we feel at least it's just assumed risk for us.
I agree. And one thing I would do too is on our aquatics call yesterday, I do know that someone spoke up and mentioned that, and Tyler, it may have been you, I can't remember, but someone mentioned at this point that they spoke to their solicitor, and I believe their solicitor reported that their people are not going to be able to be sued. Now, I would check obviously with your own solicitor because they wouldn't really be able to prove if they picked up COVID at your facility, because you can have no symptoms or you can have it in your system for so long that I believe it's the contact tracing isn't good enough to be able to tell where you actually got it. So you can walk past someone and their COVID germs can get in you. So, and I can't remember who it was, but I believe that's what their statement was, is that there really is no ability to prove that you would have gotten it on a playground or at a specific location at this point in time. But I think you can check with your own solicitor to see if that's something you're concerned with.
I would agree with that assumed risk in general for the public. I think it's a different conversation when you have a program with kids, a structured program versus just the public going on.
just to kind of add to that, this is Gina from Lower Merion. Didn't the CDC just release something that says it's not as easily spread on common surfaces as they thought it would be? So maybe that takes the whole playground equipment discussion off and you could just allow people to use it.
Hi, this is Jane from East Hanover Township, Dauphin County. Each time we do this, and I'll say it again, is also a good idea is to contact your insurance agency, because they might not cover you if anything is considered negligent in not following the state or the CDC too. So it was actually good to check in with that when it was camp related, but all things related, I would highly advise people to take that under consideration too.
Thank you. And Gina, I was just looking for that information. So if you happen to have that readily available from the CDC, if you could share it. If not, I will add it to the summer camp Google Doc. I will continue to look for it. Jane, thank you as well. I think that's a great idea. And I think the one problem that we continue to have is the CDC can provide their guidance, but also to Jane's point is if we still have to adhere by state and local guidance, which is lacking at this point, that's going to continue to be an issue. If it's unclear until that's clarified, we're going to have an issue.
Nikki,
let's not forget that the guidelines that came out from the CDC originally was a 27, 30-page document that they condensed into a one-page decision-making toolkit. So we can't even really keep track of what the CDC is coming up with.
Right.
Yeah, I see someone put that USA Today article. There's also an article in the New York Post that confirms the CDC coming out and saying that, it doesn't spread the way we thought it did, and there's still a lot to learn about this. So it's just frustrating having to follow the guidelines from one organization that seems to be contradicting itself every other day. They really need to go back and, if that is the case, they need to go back and change that document, because we're all sitting here trying to, come up with hours and hours of plans to only come back and, do something else that now it's this. It's just so frustrating.
That is probably the key. I think everybody can nod their head at that one, where, things just change so fast. And then we're just trying to catch up with our planning for these things. And before you know it, there's something else that comes up. I think that's just, unfortunately, it's the nature of this beast. And it takes a while for people to modify things, but you're absolutely right. It's just very frustrating. I just wanted to share the results of that poll. For those who are having camp, do you intend to have children wear their masks? It was a multiple choice. 39% said yes, 35% said no, 19% said sometimes, and 13% said, what does feasible mean? Because as we know, that was part of their guidelines. Whenever feasible, children over 2 should wear masks, which I found very flexible, as they say.
Thanks for sharing that, Dan. Yeah, I think that's a great question. I know having 2 6-year-old nephews, I would say it's never feasible to put a mask on them. Ashley asked, is it true that camp must be held completely outdoors until the green phase? I honestly don't know if I can answer that. And Dan, you might be able to help me out with this question. Gina says, according to Wolf's plan, yes, and that is other people's understanding. I think the question comes back to if your camp is run in a certified child care center, that is where it might be questionable. Sorry, I am just trying to keep up with.
It may be very possible that I think Governor Wolf's plan and the CDC recommendations don't match or don't line up.
Correct.
And I'm not, I can't speak to the Wolf plan too much because I'm not as familiar with that, but it did sound under the CDC documents that you could open up in yellow with the restrictions that they put in place.
And I believe on yesterday's aquatics call, excuse me, I thought someone also said, and please bear with me, we've had a lot of calls with a lot of people. I thought that their center is being used and they got a waiver for summer camp. And that's the only thing being held in their rec center, but it may be because they are a certified child care center. So certified child care is different than a traditional summer camp, and it's quite frustrating because in the past we've had the, and Doug can probably speak to this, there's been the certified preschool issues and the preschool protocols that we've been going back and forth with the state, and now where we wanted to be almost separated from the certification because we should be able to run without being certified, and now it's almost like, well, we want to be considered similar because we want to be able to run summer camps because we provide a great service. So it's a little bit frustrating right now where child care can run, but summer camps can't. I'm not saying it really well. But I believe that's the big difference right now, is that if it's indoor, it has to be certified childcare. Now, with that said, I think if the governor releases the new guidelines today or early next week, things may change. And I'm hoping they change because I think they may realize the importance of summer camp and the services we provide. Ken Lear, you asked about Josh Green compiling safe social distancing activities. Once they distribute that to us, we will be sharing that with the group. So yes. And Mike shared the ACA document. I don't know, has everyone seen that? Okay, any thoughts on that? Are you using it as a guideline? Are you using it as a guiding resource for your planning? Is it just Friday? You're all tired.
Yeah, Nikki, this is Mike with South Whitehall. I just threw that out there. I mean, it does touch on, when you're indoors, recommending everyone to wear a mask. When you're outdoors, it touches on possibly not so much. There were a couple of bullet points, I think, as far as getting new waivers created by your solicitor or what that might look like with, making sure that no one's had a temperature within the past 14 days prior to coming to camp, and just some other useful things that I found in this document. So I just wanted to make sure everybody has seen it, and we're kind of using it as our guiding document at this point, barring any big yellow flags or red flags thrown out there from the state. This looks like it was really well put together, and they really took a lot into consideration when putting this document together. So just wanted to make sure everybody had it.
Great, thank you so much. Oh, here's a great question, and I'm sorry, we have a lot of great chat today. Does anyone have a COVID-19 waiver that they're using? I see some head shakes, no. Any head shakes?
This is Christy from Silver Spring Township. My employer just put together a waiver because we're planning to come back to work on Tuesday. So I can share that with you if you want to put that out as like a template. That
would be great. Yeah, like always, I will put my email address in the chat. But any documents that you want to share with us, we'll make sure we get them up on that Google Doc. We put them out in the chat follow-up. And because I didn't say it, but I know most of you did it at the call, please put your name and email address in the chat box so we can make sure you all get the information roundtable. Any waiver, you know, all the links that have been shared today. Of course, if there's questions that we're not able to answer right now, we try to reach out and find out what answers we can. Obviously, we reached out to people in other states. Mike, yeah, any waiver would go through your solicitor. Yep. So even if we get some drafts here, we always recommend that you put them through your solicitor first, because they may want to review the language and they would have their own tweaks, because one solicitor may not like the language of another solicitor. So yeah, we always recommend that. What other questions do we have while I'm looking back through the chat box? I know we had another poll request, I think, so I'm going to go look and see if I can find that. But other questions you have for other individuals? I know virtual summer camps are happening for some people, so are there questions about how some people might be running their virtual programs, or are you all using Zoom? I know one of my friends is showing me how to do virtual trivia, which we're going to be utilizing in the future, and that was really popular. She works at the library, and they had a huge success during a fundraising campaign. So what virtual ideas might you be using if you're not allowed to do, or not moving forward with in-person events?
Nikki, briefly before we go into that, I just wanted to say I did talk to the Redwoods group. They're a pretty large risk mitigation agency. A lot of insurers, they're insured a lot with the YMCA's. So they actually released a free resource. I just attached it, and it actually has sample waivers and language. Obviously, like you said, those all have to be approved by the solicitors and whatnot. But I think it just was helpful along the lines of what they're putting out for the YMCA's.
Great, thanks, Tyler.
Nikki, I have another question before we move on to virtual programs too. So I know that we're looking into social distancing games. We've canceled our trips, but we were still planning on bringing some stuff in. We do a water day where we bring in a water slide. Does anybody have any thoughts, or does anybody normally do that? If you normally do, did you cancel that? Are you, what are your thoughts on that? Or another thing is, it kind of along the same lines, we do a carnival week. So we set up carnival games. They're not necessarily playing together, but they would be using, let's say if, they're knocking down plastic milk bottles. They're using the same balls. Should we sanitize in between each camper using them?
Well, I think it depends. If the ball is just a weight that can be easily purchased for pretty cheap in bulk, maybe go that route. So they don't use the same ball.
Yeah.
The way I interpreted the CDC guidelines is if you are having your campers in groups or activity groups, it would be between the groups that you would sanitize the equipment like the ball. Like if they were playing basketball and then they rotated, you would sanitize the ball between groups, not between each child.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Or you could just try to schedule that the last thing of the summer. Hopefully maybe the guidelines are better for you, or you can go into the green phase and open up some options for you.
And this is Paul from Middletown. I think what I would tell you, or my approach, is going to be every contact surface is going to be contaminated. So washing hands is going to be the big thing. So keep the hands away from the face, do what you got to do, and then, get them wash their hands after they're on the playground, after they do their activities. The other thing that we're planning on doing is 2 of our facilities have mud sinks. So at the end of our 3-hour shift or 6-hour shift, somebody's going to be designated as, you know, washing the balls in a bucket of soap and, you know, in the mud sink, soap and water, pour a little bleach in there, basically. So at the end of the day, they're going to get washed. They're going to air dry overnight and then rinse, repeat, start again. In addition to having, you know, 17 of each kind, I think, because like you said, they're all pretty cheap balls. So buying a couple extra is not going to be a big thing.
So speaking of disinfecting and sanitation, how have you already ordered and received all your cleaning supplies? Have you seen problems with getting it in stock? I know I still go to the grocery store and can't get certain things. The toilet paper aisle is still empty. So I'm just curious. I know that's something we talked about, is the concern of getting supplies. Are you able to get, I know some people have discussed whether or not they're going to be taking temperatures. Were you able to get, I know we had some great links that we shared in the last roundtable about thermometers. Have you been able to actually secure everything you needed for preparing for your programs this year? I see Derek said Amazon has COVID section for business accounts. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, we got our thermometer from them, the contactless forehead one. We've tried it out. It takes 2 AAA batteries. It costs, maybe it's like 65 to 70 bucks now.
Okay.
And it seems to work pretty well.
Great.
And you can really fast it within the week.
And Megan suggests maybe contacting your local EMS coordinator to help with supplies. That's a great suggestion. Just, you might want to start thinking about it earlier rather than later, because if other camps across the country will be able to run, depending on what state they're in, there might be that push again, or that rush to get equipment and supplies. So just the thought. Another question, we will get back to the virtual events, because that was a question that was asked in the group. So there's the virtual question, but also, what are people doing for drop off and pickup? I know that there was discussion about doing like drive-through drop off and pickup. Are you, you know, old-fashioned, you know, just having staff initial kids in with their parents? Are you taking temperatures before they get out? So what are your drop off pickup plans? Please feel free to share those with the group.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I'm from North Fayette Township. Right now we're looking for our drop off and pickup. We're looking to have them remain in the car and take their temperature while they're still in the car. We're writing up a short questionnaire for the parents to see whether they have been exposed or exhibited any symptoms within the last 72 hours. And then for pickup, we're going to, if we hold the program, have them call ahead so that we can have their child ready to limit their the parents' contact within our park facility.
This is, Megan shared something really interesting in the chat box, which I did not realize. She said many of their staff bike to work, and I guess before taking temperatures, they're not supposed to drink anything hot or cold within 30 minutes. I find that interesting. So if you have staff who are biking to work, I don't know, when I bike, I like to have some water. So, or if they're coming in the morning and they're drinking coffee, I find that interesting, or just biking on a hot 90-degree morning. That could be something to keep in mind. So thanks for sharing that, Megan. That's weird. I didn't know that would affect it. So thank you. Other pickup drop-off plans, and what about kids who walk? Are you going to allow kids to walk to camp? I know that's, even in the past, that's been tricky whether or not you permit it to begin with, but now in the time of COVID, how are you handling that? Yeah, Jennifer said that they're going to have separate areas for temperature check at drop off and a staff person and walkie-talkie at their cars. I think that's a great idea. Megan, if you can, you had mentioned about the temperatures, are they taken from the mouth? Are you doing a head scan for your staff that they're not supposed to have hot or cold beverages? I don't know if you can speak up.
I'm sorry, I had to walk away. What'd you say?
That's okay. A question about the beverages. Is it temperature that's being taken orally, or is it still the head scanner? I get the question is still about the beverages.
This was in reference to our pool. Our emergency services coordinator and somebody from the Pennsylvania Department of Health met us yesterday, and I asked about checking temperatures, and he said, you should for staff, but not for patrons. Again, this was the pool, but I can see it mimicking, camp situations. He said it was recommended, not necessary. And then I brought up how, our staff's like 15, 16, and they biked, and they had mentioned the cold or hot beverages. I've never heard of that, but I said, we have a water cooler here. Obviously, we have to keep our guards, hydrated. And she said, well, you just might want to wait a little bit before they get to, after they arrive, let them cool down basically, and then take their temperature. But it was all very new to me. Again, it was the representative from the Pennsylvania Department of Health that said that. I never heard of that before. So I want to check into it, but it was very interesting.
But that would be with the head scanning thermometer?
He said with the head scanning. And then they also, basically said they're not 100% accurate.
Right.
So and then you have to take it correctly too, like go from, one temple to the other. And, they did say that if you did use an oral thermometer, you would have to change your gloves every time. And, obviously the non-touch ones are better, but, the training on taking temperatures is also important. But I have to do more research. This was just yesterday morning, so.
Great, thanks for sharing that. I had no idea.
With those temporal thermometers, we've been using those here in the municipal building for those that are coming into the building. The building's obviously closed except for those of us that are coming in. And we've had to document every day. I have not achieved a temperature above 98.0 yet. Those things are so unreliable. They're almost not worth doing other than to say, gee, we're doing something to look at it. So, and then putting them in the hands of our staff, I don't expect the results to be any different. We're going to require it. We're going to walk them through it, both the water park and the camp staff, but and document that they're not feeling ill. But we're not documenting temperatures, and I don't see us taking the temperature of the kids coming into camp either.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't plan to do it here unless it's required on our end. We will do a staff check again, provided it's required. But if it's not required, we don't really intend to. And that's because a lot of these statistics that are coming out with a lot of the people that are not symptomatic, they're not running fevers. And even a small percentages of the ones that are symptomatic aren't always running fevers. So it's not a foolproof check in the first place. And like you said, Nikki, we actually had a meeting with Hike Vision, and we're looking at their software that can actually screen multiple people as they walk by you. But even they were saying, and they have, thousands upon thousands of dollars in software that they're trying to sell us. It takes them between 3 to 5 minutes of somebody coming indoors to get an actual accurate reading of their temperature. Because if they're outside or they were doing an exercise outside in our park and then they're coming in, that causes them to run higher. So, we can't hold people in our lobby for 3 to 5 minutes waiting for their temperature to come down. There's just so many gray areas we feel with that software. So if it's not required, we're not intending to do it.
Okay. All right, any other thoughts on drop-off pickup? We have about 15 minutes left. We can also go back to virtual programming. And how are you doing it? What platforms are you using? Are you charging? We would love to hear a little bit more about that. I know Jane, and I'm not sure if she's still on the call, had said that she plans on doing some free virtual programming. She said she found an arm for her cell phone, which would allow her to continue to do the art and craft classes that they've been doing, which would be instructional. I think that's a great idea. I know a lot of people have done more laid back fitness classes. I'm not going to say laid back because I can't do it, but yoga, Tai Chi and stuff like that. So what are some of the virtual programs that people are doing? How are you getting people engaged? Any thoughts that you want to share on that? Or are you just thinking no one's going to participate because they all want to be outside like the rest of them? I see, Gina, you're working with third-party online adventures. If anyone has who they're working with, or their, thank you. She just shared the link. I was just getting ready to send it or say that. So we'll make sure, again, all these links are on our follow-up email. So she uses online adventure camps for their online information. So anyone else?
Nikki, this is Paul from,
sorry.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Paul.
This is Paul from Middletown and Bucks County. So we surveyed our 400, our 300 families that had already signed up. 87% said no virtual camp. I don't want this, so we didn't even pursue it. We're doing the Rectivity bags, which are activities in a bag that we plan to drop off just to give them something to do. But other than the couple of yogas and a couple of Zumbas, we weren't going to go crazy for the kids because parents didn't want it.
Paul, would you mind sharing that survey with us in case other people want to utilize the survey for their communities? And also, Gina, I know you wanted to speak up, but after Gina responds, what other creative ideas do you have? I think the bags are a great idea to make sure you're still engaging your communities, especially because, they can pick them up and they can still be active. I know, I'm sure a lot of people don't want to be on their computers. I think virtual programs are still great ideas, especially on rainy days. I think people take great advantage of them, but I also know that people want to get out and get into their parks. So Gina, I'm going to let you speak up, but after that, what other creative ideas are you implementing this summer?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the virtual programs. We subcontract most of our camps, and all the subcontractors, Shining Knights Chess, Mad Science, Bricks for Kids, Engineering for Kids, they're all offering virtual programs as well. So that's been the route that we're really taking because our registration numbers are so low and for the in-person classes that it seems like it's the only option.
Great. What about virtual field trips for rainy days when you can't go to those locations? Has anyone done any of those? I know, as you can all tell, I'm a fan of alpacas, so I did a virtual alpaca farm tour the other day, and it was cute. It was fun, and I'm an adult, and I thought it was cute, and I invited my nephews on it. So what kind of stuff like that are you doing? I know you guys have other ideas. The bags are great.
All right, I'll jump in again. This is Paul from Middletown Township. So the other thing that we're doing is not all of our counselors are going to be working this year. So we're going to go from 50 to maybe utilizing 25. We have that babysitting course. So everybody that's interested, we're going to put them through the 6-hour babysitting course. And then basically, for lack of a better term, become babysitting pimps, if you will. And just through GoToMeeting, Connect, families that need coverage, either both work or emergency frontliners, and students that, you know, will eventually go back to college sometime and want to make some money. So we'll act as a conduit to say, you know, do the initial meeting and then let it become a private transaction for how many days a week and everything else like that. So that will hopefully take care of some of the parents that need off hour or as much help as they can to get through, you know, the summer.
Great. Thank you for sharing. There's some chat in the discussion in the chat box about national park tours. I think that's great. I definitely think that's a good idea. Gettysburg, Megan mentioned, opened up. Yes, I will share the link to the alpaca farm tour for those who are interested. It will be in the follow-up. Let's see. A question, does anyone know what their course of action is if we do open and then have to close? So if for some reason our programs are a go and then the virus spikes back up and we're forced to close, this goes back to like an emergency action plan. What are your thoughts on an emergency action plan for if we are getting the clear and then all of a sudden maybe the state or the government just shuts us down completely?
Nikki, we're really looking at programming from a 2-week block perspective now. So once we get the go ahead, everything we publish is we're thinking is about 2 weeks out. That includes, you know, camp is going to be much more basic this year than it ever has been, right? We're not going to have super specific theme oriented camps. So it's going to be kind of based on knowledge. We're going 2 weeks at a time. And if we can't offer the next 2 week set, then we won't. So we're kind of, hopefully that 14-day window of offerings doesn't really lock us in to have to commit to something that we might have to cancel. Because our entire program guide, you know, 6 months of work to publish the spring and summer guide, and now it's all pretty much just a moot point. It's just nice paper.
Yeah. Yeah. Is anyone else taking that route? A short-term planning?
Yeah, this is Mike again, South Whitehall. We're doing the same thing, but we're actually doing it week by week basis. So we're looking to line up, you know, camps, 20 children, 2 staff every week. Some different themes and things though, as far as arts and crafts week or just fun fitness week or things like that. But yeah, just going week by week, more or less, because if we do get shut down, we don't want a long commitment or a long, you know, 6-week camp being halfway underway and then having to deal with refunds and all kinds of other stuff. So.
Right.
So along those same lines, am I to understand then if everybody's, if those of you that are running programs and are doing it week by week or 2 weeks at a time, then obviously you're not, I'm thinking about my parents, they're looking for childcare that use us for the whole summer. So obviously then you're not guaranteeing that childcare would be available for the summer, as well as what will you do about staffing? Like we hire on these summer counselors and then, you know, they're not making any money if we shut down. So I'm just wondering, like, have you thought about that or?
Yeah, absolutely. I reached out to all of our counselors and bear in mind, we normally have 400 to 500 children in our summer camp, and we're looking at, you know, maybe 100 to 150 now per week if you know, all goes well. I emailed all the counselors. Again, we typically have close to 30 counselors or so. Most of them have responded in favor of staying on. A few have said they're going to go seek other employment, but, you know, that they'd be willing to help out if and when, you know, would be viable for them. But to be honest, most of them have said, no, we're on board. If you, you know, are able to make this happen, we're going to be there and looking forward to working with the kids. You know, we've sent out some questionnaires and things as well, as far as if masks were required, would you send your child to camp? And a little over 80% said yes for that question. So just kind of doing our due diligence, checking every box, you know, getting hand washing stations on site. And it will be all outdoor programming, where in years past, indoor, you know, it's been in the schools and things like that. These camps we won't have any indoor space. It'll all be outside in the parks.
Okay.
And Michelle, you know, on our end too, I guess I should preface our facility. We're in a township that We only serve residents for our school-age camp, and our township is in, without a doubt, a very high socioeconomic status area. Most parents either have full-time nannies or they have, you have one parent working in the household. So I'm not saying we don't have working families in our community, of course, but for us, our camp options were never really much of a full-time childcare provider, more of just an enrichment opportunity, which is why we're kind of looking at doing more like youth excursion activities and things like that within our parks and things versus the full 6-week commitment program type.
Gotcha. I'm right next door, Tyler. I'm over in Bethel Park.
Oh, you can relate then. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but a lot of folks, I'm being asked to basically provide childcare, whereas normally our days were 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. for 8 weeks of camp. And you can't do that. I can't do that this summer. I just can't. So, okay.
Yep, completely understand.
It's a tough one.
All right, so we just have a few more minutes left. So I want to just check with everyone on the call. Do we have any final questions that you want to ask the group? Now is the time. We will schedule another roundtable. I don't know if you want to put in the chat box when you feel a good time for that would be. Again, I'm hoping we hear from the governor's office either today or early next week, but if you want to share in the chat box when you would want to see another one of these scheduled. If you did not put your name and email address, please do, but also what last minute questions do you have that maybe the group can help you with, and if not, maybe PRPS can see what we can do on our end.
I just had one question. Is everybody like at least doing a week as the minimum amount of time they're keeping their kids together? Like, is everyone doing away with any kind of, I did used to allow drop-ins within our time if we had a spot available that kids could come. I wasn't planning on allowing that this year. But I know some people do like the whole summer. I didn't know if like week by week, because they say to keep the kids together and in the same groups, if you can do week by week, if that's acceptable.
So Ashley, this is Paul from Bucks County again. So what I can tell you is that I don't know whether we're right or wrong, but the 20 people that picked that program for that 5 weeks are going to be the same. So whether they're going to miss a week or anything else like that, some of my colleagues are talking about doing, like letting children register for a week here and there. And I just felt the cross-contamination was just too much to ask for. So I'm just going to go with this. So we can't service as many children, but that was one of those decisions that we made at a high level just to say, we're going to give you something, and this is the thing that'll keep us safest.
Any other questions? All right, well, we'll keep the chat box open for a few more minutes. Thank you for all that you do. I hope you have a fantastic Memorial Day weekend, and even though we're under weird circumstances, are able to enjoy it and see a few people, even if it's just your close household family. So thank you all for participating. I will reach out as soon as we get more information on scheduling our next roundtable. And don't forget the governor, I believe he is talking at 2 today. So hopefully he'll have some information for us. So thank you. Have a great weekend.